Hello, class. Welcome to the possibly very last episode of IPC This Week. This is week 7, lessons 13 through 14, June 1 through June 8. But it's a very special week because we've got a very special guest star this week, Mr. Ackley. Welcome, Mr. Ackley.
Thanks for having me. I feel like it's been so long since we've been able to do this.
That's great. So, how's it going with you? How have you been spending your time?
How's it going? It's going great. I've missed the routine of going to school, but for the most part, this has been a pretty good experience. I spend a lot of time with my family. We've been riding bikes, doing a lot of outdoor activities like having campfires, and just finding creative ways to keep busy.
Fascinating. So, got any plans for this big summer break coming up?
So plans for the summer? My plans are trying to relax as much as possible. Believe it or not, having 3 kids and trying to work with my wife working has been a challenge. I look forward to soaking as much sun as possible and spending a lot of time at the beach. We plan on going down to the beach starting the week of June 20th down in Ocean City.
Sounds great. OC, huh? Don't forget about those social distancing rules still in effect. So, let's get down to business here. For this possible last week of working on stuff, week 7 here, what advice do you have for the students for working this week?
So as for this week, week 7, my suggestions and my advice for you would be to really enjoy this week. I think learning about stars is something that can be really fascinating. And just like you learned in biology about living things and how living things have a life cycle, stars have a life cycle too. So you'll find out a lot of things that you didn't know about how they change size, and they change colors and shapes. So I think that you'll learn a lot this week.
That's really great. Well, thanks for being here on our last episode of IPC This Week. Any last words you want to share with the students before you go?
As for last words that I'd like to share, I think for most of you, I look forward to seeing you next year. Well, most of you at least. Have a great summer and stay out of trouble. And a thought for some of you is that a mask might actually be a good thing. It actually might make you look good for once. So just a couple closing thoughts for you there. Anyway, have a good summer, stay out of trouble, and I'll see you next year.
Very impressive. I hadn't really thought of it like that. Well, thanks again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great end of the school year and have a fantastic summer. Okay, again, thank you, Mr. Ackley, for being on the show. This is week 7, lessons 13 and 14, June 1 through June 8. Let's just mention a few things. So there you go. You know how to do this by now. 41 through 50, I think this is both 13 and 14 lessons. Here's some of the things that, reason why we're talking about this. I think we talked about this in class. Probably. I bring this up every now and then. So we talked about the most common elements in the universe, mostly hydrogen and helium by a large amount. And then these are your next 4 most common elements in the universe. It just so happens that some of those, a good chunk of those, are the exact same ones that are the same elements that comprise the human body. So you're going to be looking at elements and stars. So the reason why we're putting these together is stars are where elements come from, where everything come from. All the elements heavier than hydrogen and helium were all made in stars. All of them, including the ones that make up everything in the solar system and you and I. And there you are. We're literally made of the most common stuff in the universe that's floating around and produced by stars. So as just for some relative comparison's sake, we may have looked at this in class too, I'm not sure. There's not a bad portrait of the planets there. Pluto's probably too big for that. Maybe Mars should be a little bigger, but not too bad. And then keep an eye on Earth. Earth might be should be maybe a little bit smaller, but that's okay. There's the great red spot on Jupiter. big planet, right? And there's little tiny Pluto. There's our solar system that we're talking about, roughly 9 billion kilometers across, not drawn to scale at all, but that's us way in there. And then here's our sun, and then there's the size of the Earth relative to the sun. You can fit about 108 Earths across the diameter of the sun, and about 1 million Earths inside the sun. So the sun's pretty big, pretty large object. Then if we go looking at some other stars other than the sun, here's Sirius. This is the brightest nighttime star you'll ever see in the constellation Canis Major in the wintertime. Very bright. Not that large. It's just a decent distance from us. It appears very bright in the sky. And then there's Jupiter on this scale is about a pixel. Earth is invisible on this scale. And we've got some other stars, Pollux in Gemini. And then look how big Arcturus is. Imagine Arcturus, where the sun would be, and what that would look like to us. Arcturus is a giant star. But let's keep going. There's Arcturus now looks small when we compare to Rigel and Betelgeuse. There's Aldebaran in Taurus. And then also in Orion is giant Betelgeuse. On this scale, Jupiter's invisible, so the sun is just 1 pixel. Look at the size of Betelgeuse compared to the sun. And then Antares is ridiculously large. At one time, Antares was thought to be the largest star, and they've since actually found stars larger than Antares. So, stars can be very big and very far apart. Here's where we are. This is our closest star to us, Proxima Centauri. 39.9 trillion kilometers away, and there's nothing in between there, just empty space pretty much. Maybe a rogue asteroid or something, or a moon maybe, but probably not. Just empty space. 4.3 light years. So when we look at the light from Proxima Centauri, it took 4 years to get to us. So when you look at it, you're seeing it as it was 4 years ago because of how long light takes to get to us. If we were to get on our fastest rocket ship we've got right now, it would take us over 80,000 years just to get to there, the closest star. And that's that emptiness in that whole radius all the way around us. So stars are very far apart and very big. So just keep that in mind. And so what you're going to be learning about more is the life cycle of stars. Here briefly is what it is. Starts off with this big cloud of gas and dust. All the elements, all the atoms rather, are already there that make up everything in the solar system and everybody, and then they clump together. Eventually a star will start to form, and you're going to be reading about nuclear fusion when the pressure and temperature get high enough and can force hydrogen atoms together in the proton-proton chain and ignite nuclear fusion and actually convert matter into pure energy, and it releases a huge amount of matter. Eventually it'll get hot enough that'll happen somewhere in there, and then everything spins just like an ice skater spinning, and she pulls her arms in and starts to spin faster. Same thing happens there, conservation of angular momentum, and then it flattens out into this disk, right? And it just was all this kind of nebula garbage, right? Gas and dust and elements, and then it flattens into this disk, and that garbage becomes the planets. Okay, and that's what happens. So when a star forms, planets form around it. That's part of star formation. That's why we say when you look up in the sky at night and you see all those stars, they probably all have a solar system going around them. Every single one of them. All 300 billion in our own little galaxy right now probably all have stars going around them, or planets going around the stars rather. Okay, so you're going to learn more about that life cycle. Well, I should say that's the process of star formation, stars and planets, and you're going to learn more about the life cycle. Okay, this would be our star, our sun here on the top, and we're currently in the main sequence. It's going to go through these phases eventually. Larger stars will go through this, ultimately supernova, like the one I said earlier. Betelgeuse, those really big ones, will explode like that into a very energetic supernova one day, and then they'll end up maybe as a neutron star or a black hole. Our sun will go through this path, end up as a white dwarf, and ultimately when it cools off in a very, very long time, it will be a black dwarf. It'll just be a lump of coal, I should say, a lump of carbon about the size of the Earth. Won't give off any heat or light. just be a little black dwarf floating around out there. So you're gonna be watching a few videos to learn about the life cycle of stars. Good stuff. So pay attention to those, and you'll be reading a little. And then this covers 13 and 14. So then you're going to look at some nucleosynthesis, which is where you will start off next year when you go into Earth and environmental systems. So pay attention to some of that stuff. It'll be helpful for next year. And that's about it. I mean, there's not a whole lot there. I think, look at that up through 54 in your packet, and that might be the end of it. You know where to upload. If this is the last time I'm talking to you, thanks everybody for all the hard work you did. It was great seeing you continue working. Too bad we didn't get back together one last time, but have a good summer. Swing by my room if we're in school next year and say hello.